I finally begun moving everything into the new room, and I'm so excited about it. However, as I've said before, I haven't really been keeping up with them from an aesthetic perspective. I knew it was only a matter of time before they'd be moved again, and I didn't want to be redundant. I'll share more about that at a later time. What I want to focus on here is bringing some of these enclosures back up to speed. Believe it or not, it'll actually be much more effective for me to do most of that now, and finish things up in the new space. Anyway, for the ease of everything, I'm going to begin with the smaller rack over here, starting up top. This of course is a Lowtech Aquascape that I set up just about 3 years ago, so it's really seasoned at this point. All of the inhabitants are doing extremely well, from the gold ring or tin one-eyed Daniel, which are one of my personal favorites, the green Kubota rasbora, these giant Amano shrimp, and especially the cherry shrimp. This undoubtedly is Shrimp City at this point, and honestly, I love to see it. It's just cool to see them peppered all throughout this setup, and they just add so much life to it. Of course, you'll see them all over the plants, which are doing just as well as everything else I just described. Some of the highlights of course include this beautiful aquarium lily, Bucephalandra, and Bolbitis hutalotii. Oh yeah, there's also this Riccia up in the top, which I didn't intentionally add, but I love how it looks. Even though everything is doing exceptionally well, there are a few things that I need to address, like cleaning the glass, trimming up the plants a little bit, and removing a few excess patches of algae. Not that much honestly, so this should be a quick one. The primary thing to address is probably this Rotala. It's growing a little wild and will look much better after a haircut. I don't know about you, but I think that's a little better, but the shrimp are all over the trimmings. I had to scare them off before removing the stems. I also need to pull out a few of the other plants that are going a little too wild. I scrubbed the branches to remove any algae I could and scraped the glass. The shrimp always love a good scrubbing and are always out in full force right after. And after all that, the water's a little cloudy, but that's alright. I'm going to drain this down low to move it, which will also account for a water change and clear things up. Before that though, I'm going to address these two tanks down here. I don't have to do much with the frogs here at all since their setup is so new. As you'll see, the environment is settling in nicely and the frogs are so awesome. They're much more active than I remember whenever I kept them in the past, and they're surprisingly intuitive about my presence. They seem to emerge out of nowhere every time that I walk past the tank. I also love how the Riparium plants are filling in, and they look really good if you ask me. The only thing is that I need to replant some of the aquatics, but that's an easy fix. Everything's looking good, but I'll also do a water change. I'll do that after I dismantle this one here. This is what remains of the Volcano Rasbora islandscape. I've had this vacant since moving, and the fish that were living in it are now in the tank to its left. I knew I was going to dismantle it, and although I've taken things from it little by little, I didn't feel like doing it completely until now. Either way, I'll do my best to salvage what I can. Back the next day, and you can see that I got these tanks drained and moved out, so all good on that front. We're going to do the same thing here, starting with Wasabi. Compared to some of the others, Wasabi's tank really needs a little bit of love. He's doing fine, of course, and most of the plants and things in here are as well, but there's a good bit of algae as well as duckweed and stuff stuck to the glass, so I really just got to get in here and clean things up a little bit and get it looking pristine again. I'm going to be a little more invasive with this one, so I should probably get Wasabi out of here and get to work. To better access everything that needs serviced, I pulled out the driftwood and cork bark. Then I removed whatever algae I could and got to work on the glass. I sprayed it all down with my mister to remove loose items and scraped away the rest. I netted all of that up to remove it from the system completely. Finally, I drained it out and did a gravel vac to remove broken down botanicals. I got his tank all cleaned up and moved off the rack. There was an issue though. I was going to put it on the bottom here, but it's just a little too tall. And the only other tank from this side that will fit is the Crystal Gems Aquarium, so that's what we'll do next. All in all, this tank is still looking good, but there is a little bit of algae forming on the glass and within the hardscape. The fish are also hiding right now because of all that commotion that was going on downstairs. So like before, I'm going to get all this algae cleaned off, drain it down, and move it over to the rack. Now I've got that one moved over and we're left to 4 tanks. The three up top here really just need water changes and maybe removing a few floating plants, so I don't have to do too much there. And then this one on the bottom, I'm actually not going to do anything at all. Actually, let me backtrack on that a little bit. I misspoke on the Ancient Ruins Paludarium here. As you can see, this wisteria just popped out of the moss and it went wild, and you can't even see the face anymore. So I like how it looks, but I still want to see the face, so I'll just trim it up a little bit in front of there and let it keep going. I guess since we're talking about this tank, I might as well start here. You'll notice that down on the bottom, there's way more fish in here than whenever I originally stocked it. The endlers have been doing their thing and we have a plethora of babies in here. I do think I'm going to add some more plants down in the bottom just to fill things in a little bit more, but I'll do that after I pull out some of these floating plants. As I trimmed up the wisteria, I moved as little as possible to retain the fullness it creates. Plus, I think this statue face looks even better, being somewhat hidden by the plants. I also found a bunch of stink bug carcasses down in the water that had to go. A quick scrape and duckweed removal made things look a lot better if you ask me. I'll do the water change along with the others once I'm about to move them. The play button Paludarium is looking great as is. I'm hoping that the white clouds will breed again sometime soon, but I'm sure this final move will set things back a little. Anyway, all that I have to do here is just pull out some of the floating plants. As for the Metaframe Aquarium, it's also looking really good. As you can see, the fish, plants, and overall environment is doing quite well. All I have to do here is clean the glass, trim and redistribute plants, and do the water change. And last but not least, on the bottom we have what was the Rainbow Shiner River tank. I say was because when I set this up about a year ago, I made it specifically for the Rainbow Shiners. I had it set up for about 6 months and everything was going well, the shiners were growing and coloring up, but one day when I came downstairs, they all jumped out. I just want to pause on that real quick to say that this is something I'll be changing moving forward. I've been keeping fish tanks for well over 16 years, and over the course of that time, I've really not had any issues with fish jumping out until relatively recently. It first occurred with Ellie the Betta, and then more recently with the Rainbow Shiners. Now I don't want this to keep happening, so unless it's a setup that I designed like a Riparium or Paludarium where the water level's lowered, or with a fish that I know isn't going to jump out, I'm going to start putting lids on everything. Unfortunately, I have no idea what happened because everything else with the tank appeared to be fine. So in the meantime, I was basically just using this as a holding tank. It has all the pearl danios that were in here with the Rainbow Shiners, as well as the volcano rasbora, various other danios I had in the quarantine area, and also the white clouds that were in with the firebelly toads. I don't intend to keep it up for much longer, and I'll likely repurpose it for something else very soon. Another thing I wanted to talk about real quick are the Vivariums over here. All three of the new Caledonia Geckos and their setups are doing very well. They're all sleeping right now, but that's to be expected since it's the middle of the day. Like I said, the plants are doing well, and so are the cleanup crews. That said, I do have to add some more leaf litter to these. I'm just using a selection of hardwood leaves that I collected from my yard, which I boiled ahead of time. I guess that I should also mention that I put their biodegradable food dishes underneath of the leaf litter so the isopods can eat them. Below them is Houdini's vivarium, and he's also in need of some new leaves. You'll see how he is at the glass here. He's just very inquisitive and always wants to know what's going on. He sensed me doing things in the tanks above and he was curious about what was going on. The same can be said when I'm actually in his tank. If I'm doing things with the water bowl or adding leaves like you see here, he's always got to be in the action and wants to know exactly what I'm up to. Now that's much better if you ask me. It's kind of ironic and funny because I used to not really care for the look of leaf litter and I opted out of including it in my vivariums for moss and things like that. But the more that I use it, the more that I like how it looks, and I see how it helps create an enriching environment for the animals. In Dean's case, I think that the new smells always intrigue him, and it's cool to just watch him slither throughout them, and I genuinely think that he does enjoy them. Of course, in his case and the geckos, they also provide a home and food source for the isopods and springtails. I also made sure to save some of the leaves for Wasabi's tank. Not only do the leaves look cool, but Bettas especially like hiding and swimming through them, and they also release tannins and humic acids, which are very beneficial to them. And at this point, I was going to address a few things in Samson and Cookie setups, but a serious issue happened last night, and that's actually why I didn't upload on Saturday. I was finishing up the video, and I noticed something serious happened, and I'll just let the clips do the talking. I really just cannot seem to get a break. We recently just moved Samson and Cookie into here, the 75-gallon rack, and I noticed that I wasn't getting power, and I realized that the GFCI popped. So I was checking it, and everything looked okay. And then I noticed that there was some water over here, and more specifically all over the power strip. You can see it's just definitely ruined. But that was plugged into the GFCI, so it tripped. Why you gotta have these whenever you have tanks and stuff. But I'm looking around, and I thought that just the bulkhead up here on Cookie's tank was messed up, because I felt like water was leaking from under it. But as I looked more, I realized that it was coming from right here. It's kind of hard to see, but it's in between the 2x4s on the stand. So I'm like, okay, must be coming from Samson's. I check all of this. This is all good, completely dry. And then I looked further, and I discovered that it's actually Samson's tank that's leaking now. You can see that it's right where the silicone meets between the two pieces of glass on the bottom of the back there, right along the frame, and the glass itself is intact. It's not cracked on the back or the bottom, so it's probably just from shifting, from us moving this from the old house to this one, and then from the other room into this one. It's just a lot of back and forth, and I guess at some point or another it got twisted up, and now it's all messed up. I didn't intend to film any of this. I just picked it up and started doing it, so it's kind of raw, but I guess I got no choice. I got to drain this thing because I can't have it keep leaking water on the floor, and it's just been a lot lately, so I'll do that and get him in something else. So obviously I'm not happy about any of that, and I was up really late addressing it, so I'm exhausted, but I guess it could have been much worse, and I should be thankful for that. Now, with a leak like that, there's really no way to salvage it as the setup is now. My only option is to remove all of the hardscape, remove the old seal, reseal it, put everything back, and it would be good to go. Now, I actually think that's a lot more work than just making something completely new, so I think that's the route that I'm gonna take, and then I'll reuse all of that stuff for future builds so nothing goes to waste. In the meantime, I just got him in this little Tupperware container with drapes on the outside so he doesn't get stressed out, but I'm not keeping him in there for long. I'll put him into something larger in here right when I'm done with this. So needless to say, that's pretty much what I got for you in this one. I didn't want to really end it on that note, but that's where the video went, I guess. So I hope that you enjoyed seeing updates on all of the setups. I know it's been a little while since I've done that sort of thing, as well as the maintenance. I just kind of wanted to hold off on it until I got them into here, and I cannot wait to show you how everything looks in here. Stuff's really shaping up. Appreciate your patience. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed this one, and until next time, Serpa Squad, take care and peace.